The meeting happened by chance on a rainy Wednesday afternoon in November, when Ronaldo was visiting a refugee assistance center in London to learn about programs his foundation might support. And as he walked through the facility speaking with social workers about the challenges faced by displaced families, a young man sitting in a corner of the common room suddenly looked up from the Arabic textbook he was studying and said in careful English, "Excuse me, I know that voice. You are Cristiano Ronaldo." And when Ronaldo turned to acknowledge the recognition, he found himself looking at someone whose face carried the particular combination of premature maturity and persistent hope that characterized refugees who had survived experiences that would have broken many people, but who continued believing that their futures could be better than their pasts if they worked hard enough and received adequate support from communities that welcomed their contributions rather than viewing them as burdens or threats. The young man who had recognized Ronaldo's voice was named Omar, a 23-year-old engineering student from Aleppo who had fled Syria 5 years earlier after his university was destroyed in bombing campaigns that had targeted educational institutions along with hospitals, residential neighborhoods, and other civilian infrastructure. And his journey to safety had taken him through Turkey, Greece, and several European countries, where he had spent months in refugee camps while applying for asylum and trying to continue his education, despite circumstances that made normal academic progress impossible when survival and legal status took precedence over long-term career planning that required stability and resources that were unavailable to people whose lives had been disrupted by conflicts they had no power to control or escape. Omar's explanation of how he had recognized Ronaldo's voice revealed the role that football had played in maintaining hope and connection to normal life during the darkest periods of his refugee experience. When he had listened to Real Madrid matches on a small radio that had been one of the few possessions he had been able to carry during his journey across borders. And hearing Ronaldo's interviews and match commentary had provided psychological comfort and emotional stability that reminded him that there was still a world beyond conflict and displacement where people pursued dreams and achieved success through talent and determination, rather than just surviving from day to day in circumstances that seemed designed to crush hope and possibility. The conversation that developed between them revealed both the challenges and achievements that had characterized Omar's 5 years as a refugee in Europe, including his determination to continue his engineering studies despite language barriers, financial limitations, and immigration status complications that made accessing higher education difficult for people whose academic credentials from war-torn countries were often not recognized by European institutions that had their own requirements and procedures for evaluating foreign qualifications. And his success in learning English while working part-time jobs that helped support himself while sending money back to family members who remained in Syria under conditions that were still dangerous and economically devastating. The academic progress that Omar had made was remarkable, considering the obstacles he had faced, including completing language certification programs while working in restaurants and warehouses, passing entrance examinations for engineering programs despite having missed several years of formal education due to the war and displacement, and maintaining academic performance while dealing with trauma symptoms and ongoing anxiety about family members whose safety remained uncertain in a country where civilians continued to face violence and economic hardship that made daily survival challenging for people who had lost homes, jobs, and communities that had provided security and identity before conflicts destroyed the foundations of normal life. The part-time work that Omar described included jobs in construction, food service, and warehouse operations that utilized his physical capabilities and willingness to work hard, but didn't require the specialized knowledge and problem-solving skills that he was developing through his engineering studies. And his ability to balance demanding employment with academic requirements demonstrated the kind of time management and stress tolerance that characterized successful refugees who had learned to maximize opportunities while managing complex challenges that would have overwhelmed people who had never faced similar circumstances. or developed comparable resilience through necessity rather than choice. The family situation that Omar shared included parents and siblings who remained in Syria because they were unable to obtain the documentation and resources required for international travel. And his description of their living conditions revealed ongoing hardships that included limited access to electricity, clean water, and medical care, along with continued exposure to violence and economic instability that made every day a struggle for survival while he pursued educational opportunities that represented hope for eventually being able to help his family either join him in Europe or rebuild their lives in Syria if conditions improved enough to make return possible and safe. The support network that had helped Omar succeed in his studies included refugee assistance organizations, volunteer tutors, and other displaced students who had formed study groups and mutual aid societies that provided both academic assistance and emotional support for people who were trying to build new lives while maintaining connections to families and cultures that remained important to their identities and sense of purpose. And his involvement in these networks demonstrated how refugee communities created their own systems of support and advancement when official programs were inadequate or inaccessible to people whose complex circumstances required more comprehensive assistance than standard social services were designed to provide. The engineering project that Omar was working on for his final thesis involved designing low-cost water filtration systems that could be constructed using locally available materials in areas where infrastructure had been damaged or destroyed. And his choice of this practical application for his academic work reflected both his personal understanding of how infrastructure destruction affected civilian populations and his commitment to using his education to address problems that affected communities like the ones he had left behind in Syria. Demonstrating how refugee experiences could inform professional development in ways that benefited both individual advancement and broader humanitarian objectives that served communities affected by similar challenges. The scholarship support that Ronaldo arranged for Omar was designed to eliminate the financial pressures that had been forcing him to work excessive hours while pursuing his studies, allowing him to focus entirely on his academic development, while providing additional resources for research projects and professional development opportunities that could enhance his preparation for engineering career that would utilize his technical skills and first-hand understanding of infrastructure challenges in conflict-affected areas. And this comprehensive approach recognized that successful refugee integration required more than just basic survival assistance, but needed investment in long-term potential that could benefit both individuals and the communities they would serve after completing their education. The mentorship program that developed from their meeting connected Omar with experienced engineers who could provide career guidance and professional networking opportunities that were often unavailable to refugee students who lacked family connections in their fields of study. And these relationships provided not just technical knowledge, but also insights into how engineering expertise could be applied to humanitarian projects and international development work that addressed infrastructure needs in areas affected by conflicts, natural disasters, and economic challenges that required innovative solutions designed by people who understood both technical requirements and practical constraints that characterized resource-limited environments. The family reunification assistance that Ronaldo's foundation provided helped Omar navigate the complex legal and financial requirements for bringing his parents and siblings to Europe through official immigration channels that were safer and more reliable than the dangerous informal routes that many refugees used when legal options seemed impossible or prohibitively expensive. And this support recognized that refugee success was often linked to family stability, and that individual achievement was more meaningful and sustainable when it included opportunities to help family members who remained in dangerous or economically difficult circumstances that prevented them from accessing similar opportunities for advancement and security. The research collaboration that eventually developed involved Omar working with international engineering organizations to design and test infrastructure solutions for refugee camps and conflict-affected areas. allowing him to apply his academic knowledge to practical problems while building professional experience and credentials that would support his career development while contributing to humanitarian projects that serve communities facing challenges similar to those he had experienced during his own displacement and resettlement process. And this work demonstrated how refugee experiences could inform professional development in ways that created value for both individual advancement and broader humanitarian objectives. Years later, when Omar had graduated with honors and established his own engineering consulting firm, specializing in humanitarian infrastructure projects, when his family had successfully immigrated to Europe and was rebuilding their lives with security and opportunities they had lost in Syria, when the scholarship and mentorship programs had helped dozens of other refugee students pursue higher education and professional development, Ronaldo would reflect that meeting Omar at the refugee center had reminded him that displaced people were not just victims needing charity, but individuals with talents, dreams, and potential contributions that could benefit entire communities when they were given opportunities to develop their capabilities. And that successful refugee assistance required not just meeting immediate survival needs, but investing in long-term potential that recognized displaced people as complete human beings whose experiences and skills could enrich the societies that welcomed them, rather than just burden social services that viewed refugee assistance as obligation rather than opportunity for mutual benefit and cultural enrichment.